Well, each week a group of insiders joins me to offer perspective on some of the week's top stories. This week sounding off on really some stunning developments in the long-running debate over Sunday carry-out alcohol sales. Could more venture capital be flowing into Indiana? And Indy celebrates the legacy of Richard Lugars and some great mayors as well. Our insiders this week are IndyPolitics.org publisher Abdul-Hakim Shabazz, Ball State Center for Business and Economic Research Director Mike Hicks, and Leadership Indianapolis CEO Christina Hale. And welcome one and all to the Insiders.
Oh, it's good to be back.
And we start with one of the big stories of the week. Certainly, it actually broke, Abdul, a week ago. I was surprised by it. It was in the middle of the day, if I remember, on Friday, we get a news release in talking about this truce that would create support from two previously warring factions for Sunday carry-out sales.
Actually, I was going to sound really bad, sitting at the bar at the Antelope Club in downtown Indianapolis, not too far from here, when the text release came out and Grant Monahan from the Retail Council was having lunch, so I immediately run over to grab him, like, hey, what's going on here? Yeah. And yeah, it looks like the two warring factions, the grocery store people, the liquor store people, saying, hey, we'll have Sunday sales, but you get to keep your cold beer. The problem is that agreement is only binding amongst those two parties. This is not what the Summer Soda Committee is coming back with. And there was some pushback from the convenience stores who feel like they've sort of, getting the short end of the beer spout here, as well as, the general public that's thinking, hey, here's collusion between these two big lobby groups. What does this do for us in the general public? Yeah,
what your take, anybody can jump in too, but Jay Ricker, the Ricker's convenience stores, was a real forceful voice on kind of pushing this cold beer sales, expanded cold beer sales issue. He and other convenience stores are out in the cold. At least right now.
At least right now. The Summer Study Committee that's looking at this is going to come back in December. They got still a couple more meetings left, and one of the proposals is actually to allow for cold beer sales anywhere and everywhere, just only between, like, say, noon and 8 on, like, Sunday, some weird time. But I wouldn't count anybody out then. At the end of the day, don't forget, still, the Indiana General Assembly, as Christina will tell you, will have the final say.
Yeah, and this is all about business and not about convenience or consumer. And I can tell you, legislators, they poll their district, they know, and people are just fatigued of this whole battle. They're ready, just let's get this out of the way and move forward.
What do you see happening here? Again, a long way to go. The Alcohol Code Revision Commission, I think, meets a couple more times before the legislative session when the real decisions are made. How do you see this kind of playing out?
I think finally something will happen. I think we're going to have Sunday sales. I think they're going to continue to fight over who gets to sell cold beer, and they're going to try to hatch together a deal. And I think it would behoove business to not become the inconvenience lobby. I think they just need to really come together and do something for the end user, because how silly is it? Doesn't make sense to any Hoosier. You can go to a bar and get hammered, but you can't buy beer on Sunday.
Well, the only argument has ever been that there are a number of businesses that have investment in either holding the license or operating under the current rules, and they needed time to adjust. We're now 6-8 years into this. They've known that this is coming. The pendulum is swinging. It's time for a change, and I think we'll get something more like the rest of the country this session.
Yeah, it will be interesting to watch play out in the legislative session in 2018. Another big story that got some attention this week, Lessonly, an Indianapolis-based technology company, software company, getting another $8 million in funding. I think they've raised something like $13-14 million in total. They're looking to perhaps double their employment footprint here. There have been other stories over the past couple of months. Mike, do you see finally more venture capital beginning to come into the state and help grow some of these startups?
Yeah, absolutely. So 20 years ago, you couldn't probably start a technology company in Indiana. You couldn't access the venture capital and the other things that VC firms wanted you to have: management, broad technology, HR experience, that sort of thing. Today, that's not an issue. I mean, we're not Boston. This isn't New York. This is not going to be San Francisco. But nobody is going to have to relocate for VC here in Indiana. And part of that's the 21st Century Fund and more than a decade of success. But it's also just a recognition of what's happening at Purdue, IU, the other universities.
And things like, things like the increase in nonstop flights with the VC people on each of the coasts have complained about for years. That's changing as well.
Right. All the pieces are coming together for that. I think we're going to see that continue. We'll be back talking about this in 10 years.
SmartBoX is a digital company in New Albany, southeast Indiana, that announced plans to expand and add 100 jobs over the next couple of years. And Christina, I bring that up because there's so much talk and continues continues to be about kind of that divide between rural or smaller community, if you will, Indiana, and the big cities, and that gap. We don't see as many stories like this coming in places in some of the smaller communities around the state.
Yeah, it's a real success story of talent out there. There's still things that we have to put into place. You know, we still hear people talking about the cry for rural broadband and other supports out there so people not only can thrive where they are, but they want to stay and grow their families. So they need that job opportunity, but they need all the other sort of support so that they can know their kids are going to be going to good schools, they can access everything that somebody else could in a larger metropolitan area.
Do you see the gap, that divide, if you will, that's talked about a lot? Abdul, Public Policy Institute had a big event this week focused on. Do you see it getting wider? Do you see it or getting any better?
I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, unfortunately, because while you've got some mayors out there that are really thoughtful, really innovative. You look, Lloyd Winnicky down in Evansville, Greg Goodnight, Kokomo, Tom McDermott, up in the Hammond area. These guys are really saying, hey, let's try to maximize our resources. Unfortunately, you're still fighting against that. Your grandfather's Indiana, these are the people who don't want cold beer on Sunday and still don't like to change their clocks. And unfortunately, until attrition kicks in and some of these folks just kind of go on to the happy Hoosier hunting grounds in the sky, you're still going to have to be fighting some of that attitude. And
we'll have winners or losers in these communities.
Right.
I mean, you go around the state, as I have quite recently, and you'll see, just the way the issue of drug addiction is handled, and it varies county by county. The fact that most of our county sheriffs are the leading provider of mental health services, other support services. We have 20 counties that have inadequate OBGYN services, so women can't even give birth where they live. So I think also we have to take a look at some of these other issues that impact people right where they are in the most human of ways.
Yep.
Yeah, 30 Indiana counties have been losing population for decades. Another 30 are barely passing, and the urban places are doing great. And so somehow the equilibrium conditions where we don't see places that are turning into ghost towns and see more places that are growing is a huge public policy problem. It's the real public policy problem for Indiana for the next 30, 40, 50 years.
That is a big part of this leadership. The communities and the areas that are growing have good leadership. Those that aren't, perhaps not as good leadership.
Leadership plays an outside role. I mean, if you look, we talked about these three mayors are a perfect example of places that are doing the right things, investing. And unfortunately, there are a lot of places, small towns, Muncie, Terre Haute, that are really struggling, that have not got it together to make the focused generation-long investment to get to the other side of this. It's schools, it's healthcare, it's the whole gamut.
I was a commissioner and part of the formation of this report from the IU School of Public Policy, or the Public Policy Institute, and one of their top findings across the board, rural, suburban, urban, was a lack of leadership, civic leadership, and that we had to be much more intentional, structured, and thoughtful about how we cultivate this everywhere.
Yeah, leadership was on display, I think, last week. The Indiana City County, or the Indy City County building, the plaza there that's under construction, named for former Senator Richard Lugar. Mayors were on hand for that, and I think it was a real opportunity to kind of reflect on the leadership, certainly Senator Lugar, former Mayor Lugar, but a series of mayors from both parties here in Indianapolis.
That brought joy to my heart because that group really speaks to the high quality and really our brand as Central Indiana, as Indianapolis, that we have developed civic leaders of excellence. Even the Kennedy School of Government has recognized us, Unigov, all the cooperation that's happened over time.
And I think if you look at the history of Indianapolis mayors, Indianapolis has always gotten the mayor that is needed for the time. Lugar, Unigov, Goldsmith sort of modernizing, Bart Peterson sort of, Lucas Oil Stadium, Greg Ballard with the blocking and tackling with the roads infrastructure. I think Joe's has only had a couple years in office, so his legacy has yet to be done, but Indianapolis has always had good mayors and the right mayors at the right time.
Well said. Abdul-Hakim Shabazz, Christina Hale, Mike Hicks. Thanks for a great Insiders panel. We'll be right back after this.